Um, we first of all like to thank our sponsors for the Parents as Partners Conference. And today's session, we are going to just discuss some supports and programs and resources that the TDSB has for students. And like I said, then we'll move on to a question and answer session. Okay. All right. So the first program I would like to discuss with everyone is called Academic Pathways, more commonly known as D-Streaming. And the TDSB, as part of its multi-year strategic plan, has targeted that by September 2021, the majority of our grade 9 and 10 students will be taking academic level courses. And that is intentional because our research has shown that students that take grade 9 and 10 academic level courses are more successful in their courses beyond grade 10. It also, the research has shown that students that take grade 9 and 10 academic level courses have greater post-secondary options. And that's primarily because we don't limit their choices because of the courses they selected back in grade 9 when they didn't really decide what post-secondary options they wanted to pursue. The research has also shown us that students that take grade 9 and 10 academic level courses also have greater success in their post-secondary programs. Another goal for the TDSB is for all of our students to be successful and graduate from high school and meet their targets of earning 16 credits by age 16 and earning 30 credits in 4 years. So we have two programs in place. One's called Credit Rescue and one is called Credit Recovery to help our students earn as many of their credits as they can. So Credit Rescue happens while a student is taking a course. And if a student is identified by a teacher as being in risk of not earning their credit, the teacher will either do an intervention with that student or pair up that student with another teacher who is doing Credit Rescue to provide intensive support for that student to complete assignments or to get extra support so that they can earn their credit. Credit Recovery is a program that's delivered after a student has not been successful in their first attempt in the credit. And Credit Recovery can be delivered either as a course during the school year or it can be delivered as a summer school model. Credit Recovery, there is no minimum mark to receive Credit Recovery. And Credit Recovery, again, is an opportunity for a student to earn back the credits they might not have been able to succeed in their first attempt. Now, this year, what's important for students to know is that the TDSB has moved away from offering exams this year so that there will be no exams in secondary school. And the mark the students will earn will be based 100% on classwork. However, the days we had scheduled as our exam days are now flipped into credit rescue days. So this year in Quad 1, November 18th and November 19th will be credit rescue days. And the credit rescue will be offered synchronously. So synchronously means it will be delivered virtually. So teachers will contact students who are at risk of not earning their credits and will work with them in an online platform as they've been doing from 2 to 3:15 every day. And that's the goal for Credit Rescue. The TDSB also recognizes that a disproportionate number of certain communities have been suspended or expelled. So we are rethinking our suspension and expulsion practices, and we are moving more towards restorative justice practices. And that means we are training our staff and our students on using restorative justice as a means to resolve conflict, as opposed to using punitive measures like suspensions. Restorative justice runs on the pillars of the 5 R's, which are building a good relationship between students and staff, um, encouraging our students and staff to have a care and respect for each other. When a conflict arises, having the members in the conflict understand their responsibilities, and taking responsibility for their actions that ensued in the conflict, and helping those parties repair their relationship and reintegrate back to support a positive school climate. Brandon, that's your slide.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just looking up. There's a few questions that came in. So Tina, I don't know if we'll just address. There's one that's asking about quad 1, 2, 3, 4 exams. So I was just looking up just to confirm that. So it looks like the ministry has given the option to boards. And from what I've seen now, they said quad 1 for sure. There is another change happening for quad 2, 3, and 4, where individual schools will also be developing a virtual model. And I think that will also impact what exams look like. And there was one other question from D. Williams about asking certain communities. So the question is, do you mean Black students? Was the other question.
Yes, I explicitly mean Black students have been identified as being disproportionately suspended and expelled in the TDSB, and that's why we are moving towards rethinking how those practices have been delivered, because we don't want to continue those practices, and that's why restorative justice practice is what we're shifting towards. Does that clarify for you, Dee?
Okay. In the meantime, if you keep typing, that's okay. We'll come back to that one if you're still typing a message. So just want to introduce myself again. My name is Brandon Zoris. I am with Westview Centennial Secondary School. This is my first year there. Before that, I was in Emory Adult Learning Center, which had unique programs for 18 to 20-year-olds and 21 to 65-year-olds, people coming back to get their diplomas. And many of these supports here also apply to those programs as well. We are also doing the academic pathways at Westview, which has been a success, and we've been having more opportunities for students to learn about different subject areas and give them that opportunity to spend time looking whether they want to pursue college or university. For our student supports, we wanted to let parents know that there's so many great supports at a board level as well as at a local school level. All schools will have some form of guidance counselor, depending on some bigger schools may have multiple ones. And the guidance counselor is really one of the first kind of layers of support for students outside the classroom teacher. My school, we do guidance counselors by last name, so that one student will follow that guidance, or that guidance counselor will follow the student all through their career through high school. So helping them from things like, picking their courses in grade 9 and choosing a pathway that works, all the way down at the end where they're looking at graduation and post-secondary opportunities. So there's lots of, the guidance counselor plays a really key role in talking about course selection, looking at your community service hours, as well as starting to identify when things need to be referred to someone outside of them. So some of those supports that I wanted to mention is that we have child and youth counselors and child and youth workers that are usually stationed within a school, whether part-time or full-time. You can check with your school, which is the case at your school. My school, we have a half-time child and youth worker, and we have a full-time child and youth counselor. And they are amazing assets to our building. They are providing additional support. They're coordinating with teachers. They're providing some counseling opportunities to students and kind of figure out things kind of if they need any additional help. Many schools also work with a settlement worker. Usually, they are from some form of outside organization. Like at Emory last year, we had a really amazing person named Amy who was with Working Women at Jane and Finch, and they were stationed in our school once a week. Settlement workers provide so many really great opportunities for people who are looking support for maybe citizenship, permanent residence, questions about status, and any sort of legal issues, as well as things such as finding houses and work permits and finding accommodations or even local food banks. So we have really great opportunities to have them also in our schools. So any of these times, if you as a family are feeling that you need some sort of support, definitely ask. We also have community partners. So some schools, for example, work with Pathways to Education. At Westview, we have a program called Success Beyond Limits, and they have a room in our school where they're supporting about another between 20 and 50 students with all their outside and inside of school needs as well. Thank you. Good for the next slide. And from when we have those initial conversations, usually with guidance, or if we're looking through something that involves an IEP or an IPRC process, there's also more professional support services that can actually be designated to the school, designated to a family, and being able to provide supports there. So we have psychologists, we have social workers and social service workers, we have speech language pathologists, audiologists, occupational therapists, and physiotherapists. So all of these services are from in-house within the TDSB centrally, and they can be requested through the guidance counselors or from the school admin or whoever is your first point of contact within the school. And they provide really great services to the students. And from things like if a student maybe has a physical disability, they aren't able to sit in a standard desk for a time and it's uncomfortable for their learning. That's when we may have like an occupational therapist come in to look at the type of seating or the arrangement of how they're seated, to other things such as students who may have developed a stutter, and they would meet with a speech language pathologist to work on that within the TDSB. So these are all just some really great services that enable to remove barriers to make sure that everyone has equitable access to schools. Thank you. Another really great opportunity that really helps remove barriers in school is the parent councils. And many, I'm sure, of you have heard of the different parent councils within the school. And having a parent council is very, very important. They work so closely with the families and communities, as well as the PIAC reps and the trustees and the school admin. And they're such a really huge, important part and a really important voice that helps direct the school. I just left a couple things of kind of what they do. So there's usually like a school council meeting that usually happens. Right now, we're doing them virtually at our school. They often are attributed to funds and fundraising, which I didn't really want to put that on there because I don't think that's the most important part. I think the advocacy, the saying what type of needs are needed in the community, representing the parent community are very, very important. And sometimes fundraising, people get too excited on the fundraising step in terms of selling this or selling that, where the most important role I think is these other items. But fundraising and funds are part of it. A very, very, very important part as well is the school statement of needs. And this is something that how this actually will impact students in the school is it's a statement that is made through the parent council, and it talks about what type of leaders should be in the TDSB and specifically at that school. So it's an exercise in talking about what are the characteristics, what are the things that you would like to see in a principal or vice principal. So when it's time for a principal to move on to another school or be promoted, when there's an opening in the school, the parent council is consulted through the school statement of need. And this happens anyways, whether there is movement or not. So I don't want anyone to get scared that they're moving people in your school. They do this annually. And it gives a chance to talk about what direction parents would like to see the school moving. And the superintendent will use that when they are looking for a new administrator in the school. So again, a super important tool. The last thing is a parent reaching out grant. This is something that if you would like to consult with your parent council, if you're on the parent council, you can apply, and parents who aren't on the council can speak to the school or members on the council to apply for this parent reaching out grant. And it's money that you're able to apply through the Ministry of Education to run some sort of program. They have a really, really good opportunity where I saw one that a school was doing a math and science night for parents. And it was really cool where the school applied for some funding. They got some information and together, and they had and parents engaged in math and science. And then another one was about reading. And it gave parents some information and a bit of a toolkit to work with their students to support them better at home in those subjects. Yes, so there's a question about the school improvement plan to guide its work in engaging parents and improve student achievement and well-being. Yeah, so the SIP is super important as well, based off all the different competencies that are listed across and where the school is going. That's another tool definitely that the school uses the boards. We have a board improvement plan that also moves forward with the learning, and the feedback there is also very, very important. Okay, so the last thing that I was going to discuss, and then we really wanted it more about questions and answers with you. So I'll just go through the parent concern protocol. As oftentimes, if you're addressing a barrier in a school, it's really important to look at all the different options and channels that you have to you. And sometimes, if those channels, don't work out, there is a next step and a person that's recommended. Again, I'm not saying you must follow these steps. If it's always your decision, if you'd like to go out of these steps, it's fine. But the classroom teacher is really the first go-to with any classroom related question. If it's a question with something that's happening in the room, homework, the curriculum that's being covered, why did my child get a 15 out of 20 on this assignment? Those are all kind of questions that would start with the classroom teacher. During this time, I know many people are working virtually as well, and calling the school, asking for the teacher's email, or setting up, leaving a message where you can be emailed is a really good idea just to get the ball rolling in terms of a type of introduction. Okay, next slide. The next level is the school principal or vice principal. And also, if there's a question that has to do with something about maybe a registration, the schedule of the overall building, something big about a report cards, code of conduct, safety, budget, school council, are all things that are available that we are able to take on and look at. So we are able to have individual school supports through the school principal, student schedules that may involve like how we switched from a regular in-person model to doing this new kind of COVID model. Those are all questions that would arise to the school principal. And if there's something that's not being resolved at the teacher level, you are able to escalate that to the school principal for them to be able to look in that. We're principals, as a vice principal myself, I would, if I had a question that wasn't able to be solved with a teacher, usually I would meet with that teacher. I would get copies of the different assessments. I would look at the marks. I would look at the course outline to be able to best support the student and getting the needs that they need from whatever it is that's happening in that class. Cool. Next slide. And the step three is the school superintendent. What we have is we used to have families of schools, and now what we have is learning networks and learning centers. So usually the learning network would have about in secondary, usually about 5 secondary schools, and they are the ones that are supporting all the administrators and the schools. You can reach out, and I'll show a brochure at the end of how to contact your superintendent. And on the website, when you look up the parent concern protocol, you're able to find your superintendent. You can ask questions directly. They're very good at the level of higher level items, such as like alternative attendance, homeschooling programs. If you're looking at suspension appeals, which if people want to know more info, I can talk a little bit about that after. But they're usually at the higher level. And if there's a question in regards to like something in an individual classroom, that has gone through the principal and you feel has not been resolved, the superintendent would ask for information from us as well as the classroom teacher. Good, thank you. And so the other level would be trustee. Trustees are your elected officials that represent your community. So they are an excellent first step in terms of if you want to talk about concerns that are happening, maybe traffic issues or safety issues in the community, suggestions that they can bring to the board as they go to all the board meetings and there's voting and things like that that happen at the board level. And they are able to place an item on a board agenda. So, for example, if it's about devices or any sort of different policies that they want to actually either instate or vote on. And a really big component is the board budget. So they do vote on the board budget and they do work on changing the items and how those items are in the budget, as well as they have a role as well in collective bargaining and all those things there. So trustees are great. They do come out and they are an elected official and you can find your trustee. So in most schools, I just took this from the internet because I forgot to take a picture before I left of my school. Most schools will have this in the front office, and it's the parent concern protocol, which will have a picture of the trustee as well as the superintendent that's there. And so they have that information for their contact information, their email. So if you feel that there's a resolution that a superintendent or trustee needs to get involved in, or you have a suggestion about something in the community, the trustees are always there as well that you can reach out directly. So take a look for this. This is usually in the front entrance of the school or in the school office. And you can find this information also online. But I just wanted to let people know this is a great way to be able to, advocate if there's questions you have. These are kind of the four main players that you would want to get information from.
Okay, so I think at this time we can leave the floor open to questions that any parents or anyone in our session might have. So D. Williams is asking, will updated versions be made available of the school-specific parent concern protocol? I don't
Uh,
think there's a school-specific parent concern protocol.
So I know the poster itself, we haven't gotten the new one yet. So the one in the picture that I had was a 2019, 2020 in terms of the school protocol. I haven't seen the physical flyer yet for our new one. So if that's what you mean in terms of the school specific one, but what we can do, we can show you where to access that information when you do go to TDSB. Yeah, so there is award specific ones that are distributed to the school. I haven't seen ours yet. I'll definitely ask my superintendent when those are expected to come. In terms of ward specific, that information though is on the TDSB website. And when you go to the parent concern protocol, there's those two buttons on the TDSB site where it says find my superintendent and find my trustee. And that does have the most accurate information. The school principal as well is able to find that as well right away.
It's Dee Williams here. Can I ask a question live?
Yes, please, go ahead.
So, I know we're in challenging times with this COVID-19 pandemic and everything being virtual. I'm just wondering, in your personal experience, are you seeing a lot of curriculum nights being held out there? We're kind of like encouraged, experiencing a little bit of resistance, I would call it. Our principal doesn't want to put like extra demand on our teachers, but um, I don't know. I think it's like easier now. Like just like set up the Zoom event and people show. Um, have you had any curriculum nights? Are you seeing them widespread? Are like what's your experience there?
Sure, Tina, I can go first for that one. We did have we were planning the a full parent teacher evening, and is that what you meant by curriculum night, right? Like a parent teacher night, curriculum night, or was this the grade 8 parent night one?
It's a curriculum night, but it could expand, like extend to like even the open houses, like those would usually be happening now as well,
Mhm.
you know.
Sure, I can speak to both. So we did have a timeline where we at our school we had our teachers, we had a big spreadsheet, we exported class lists. We asked teachers to identify students who were possibly, their mark would be about under 60, so we deemed those students that potentially at risk of not receiving the credit. And then we asked all teachers to follow up with parents to try and schedule a time to check in with them. Some of our teachers have been telling us that they've been calling multiple times since the beginning. Others, they were happy for this kind of scheduled opportunity. So we did have kind of a modified evening where parents and students, sorry, teachers were encouraged to call parents and track it on a tracking sheet at our school. That was a helpful process because I know a lot of parents were without the midterm report card that's happening now. Having that check-in was very important to talk about ways to help them succeed. For the grade 8 parent night, we are having, it will be virtual for right now. So we just got the information last week about signing up for the dates for our night so that they don't conflict with other schools if parents are going to look at multiple schools for different specific programs, like if they're looking at a school that has IB or continuing a French immersion program. So we were just in the process last week of setting those days up. And those right now, they look like they're going to be virtual. And same with like our parent council, we've been holding those virtual. So we've been kind of minimizing the people in the building just for safety purposes, but we have been moving a lot of that stuff virtual. And each school has been kind of given school level direction on that. And if those aren't happening at your school, in terms of the parent teacher kind of interview process, at any time you can request either through the teacher or through the principal a meeting on the progress, an update on how they're doing academically, and maybe areas they can improve. That's always something that can be requested as well anytime. And Tina, I don't know if you want to share Central Tech's experience.
Um, no, I think you covered it. Is there anyone else that would like to, you feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question.
It's Dee Williams again, filling the void of silence. So, just a question. I know, like I've known for years, that you don't necessarily, as a parent, have to wait for the parent-teacher interview to come along. You can ask for that parent-teacher interview at any time. And I believe there is like a specific reference to that. I didn't. I could you like post it in the chat? Is it on the EDFO website? Was it on the Ontario Colleges of Teachers website? I recall like there was a specific reference to that somewhere.
Sure, I can take a look to see if there's a specific protocol. I know that we, anytime that a parent has ever emailed the principal, vice principal, myself to say, I've had a couple conversations here, a couple email attempts to kind of hear how things are going. Could we set up a meeting, or can I set up a meeting with the teacher? We've just done it without having to consult anything. The teachers have been really good with that. In a second, maybe if Tina has anything to add while that's happening, I'll see if I can find where that is.
Well, no, I believe our professional obligation is to be in communication with parents. And again, at Central Tech, uh, we do encourage our teachers to contact students if their credit is in jeopardy, just so everyone is aware of the situation and that we can provide as many supports before a credit rescue or a credit recovery situation arises. Dee, have you encountered a situation where a parent or that you were not able to access a teacher as a parent?
No, I don't personally run into those kind of experiences. Like I'm the co-chair of the school council at my daughter's school. So it's just basically in view of like passing on that information to other parents, um, which I generally do. But I was just like wondering about the link. I know a couple of years ago, I actually saw it. So I was just like looking for that resource.
Yeah, and I just did a quick search just to see if there was anything on the TDSB site specifically. It mentions about updating to parents, not a specific policy that I can see right this second, but in the Education Act, there is a section on communication with parents. So that would be something that would be a backing of that. I can definitely, if later, if you shoot me a private message, so that's not to everyone, if you just share your email, I can follow up to see what that would be.
Hi, this is Jeanette. I just happy to be here. Um, I just want to say, so I'm new to my son's high school, and I can sense how overwhelmed everyone is. And I feel overall, the principal's doing great. Um, but my son does need, we usually go to guidance and to this to find support at the school, and it's been really hard to figure out how to get in there, and not to, trying to get my son to do things on his own, but you know, I feel like, and time is going by so quickly. So if like we don't figure this out, um, I don't know if he's going to pass his math. And we didn't really hear from the teacher, and it's hard to get in real communication with the teacher via just email. So, like I'm not sure how to get without knowing the school at all. It's hard to get in there and
Well,
find the right help.
okay, so I can answer that. So, um, for your son, in your school's website, it should list the guidance counselors, and they usually guidance counselors are broken down by alpha. So it would
Mhm.
go based on your son's last name. There'll be an attached guidance counselor, and you would like to email that guidance counselor if you have concerns that relate to timetable, or even if you have student success needs for your child. The teacher for your son's math class should also be available by email contact. And if you're not able to get a response through email, then the next step would be to forward an email to either the guidance counselor requesting that you've not been able to make contact, or to even to the alpha vice principal, who could also help you establish contact.
Okay.
And then you can, a phone call is also, if you call the school, you will be able to access again the guidance counselor, or leave a message and have them call you back.
So the guidance counselor is also the lead to get into the special ed, right? Like I can like there I'm just confused if those are completely different departments. You
Guidance and special ed are two different
Yeah, like
departments.
the resource room kind of thing. So that this is it. Like does guidance lead to the resource room, or that's completely
Well,
different group of people.
no, well, we work as a team, right? So guidance, if your son needs access to the resource room, and you're not finding, you're not able, your son is not able to figure out how to access it, then the guidance counselor would put you and your son in touch with the either the special ed head or the teacher responsible for the resource room, and get them connected. It really depends on the model that your school is running.
Right. Okay. All right.
But
I
we
just
all,
feel like I just need to be a lot pushier. Like we've fallen through the cracks a couple of times. It's been really inconsistent. And I've been, it's the time factor as well of this
yes,
short one,
for
you
sure,
know.
because we're condensed into 8 weeks. And right now, at this point, this week, you should have been communicated a mark to date, which means you would have received the mark of the math mark for, and some sort of progress report of how your son is doing in the math class from your math teacher.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Is this of all classes?
Yeah, this is across the board, all classes.
Oh, should I? Okay.
So this
All
week
right.
is called mark to date week. In lieu of like a midterm, we were
Yeah.
giving mark to dates.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you're again, if your son needs resource room support, the guidance counselor should be able to facilitate it and connect you with the appropriate people in the school to get that support.
Right.
And then
Okay.
you also might have other supports, like in Central Tech, we have UPHS teachers we have hired to specifically work and support with our students for numeracy and literacy. So in our school, we're connecting students who are struggling in math with a teacher who's working with them one-on-one in a virtual format.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yes, it depends on the model for your school, but give them a call and give them an email. And if ultimately, like if the guidance counselor or the teacher is not able to respond, then contact the vice principal, who will be looking after your son.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And there's just a few questions I'll go over. So the question was about the new math curriculum. The new math curriculum that just came out is the elementary one. So it hasn't been made for the secondary one yet. So I know that is coming. The PD that our teachers focus on in secondary at the beginning was regards to anti-Black racism and wellness. Those are the two main focuses as well, as in and equity as well. That were the 3 days while we were preparing. And then the other PD that the most schools have been working on is the Brightspace and Google Classroom PD. So those have kind of been the four main focuses of that week before we started school. That was kind of the PD that happened there. I'm
Okay,
just gonna.
Sharon's asking that what do you do? What do you do if you not get an email from the teacher this week as a mark to receive the mark to date? Um, Sometimes the school might not have a current email or might have an incorrect email for a parent. And uh, if that's a situation where the email, you did not receive an email, and if we don't have an email contact, because not all parents have emails, we will call the parent with a mark to date. So if you did not receive an email or a call with a progress report of some kind from the teacher, then please email the teacher and they will be in contact with you. I know at our school, and I'm hoping at most schools, the teachers are responsive to any kind of communication from a parent or a student. And certainly at this point in the year, because we're halfway through quad one, you would like to know how your child is progressing.
Yeah, and with the switching to a quadmester model it has its pros and cons, just like any other model. So the last 2 years, my school was actually on a quad-based model, and some of the benefits that you may want to know about the quad-based model is that if a student is potentially behind in credits, or potentially maybe they're in ESL, for example, where they are trying to work through something where maybe they're supposed to be at the grade 10 level, but they're still completing, say, grade 9 math. Usually it's a semestered or a setting is very challenging to be able to take, one course and then the next level right away. Whereas when we were in with Emory last year, we had the quad model, and students could go through, for example, like ESL B, and then quad 2C, and then the next quad D, and then they could move into the academic English, for example. So some of the benefits that you may want to ask when you look at your child's schedule is looking at if they're either thinking of reaching ahead, or if there's some credits that they're trying to get back, that you'll be able to take those and move some of the schedules around. So we have a couple students, for example, they decided they want to switch pathways and they want to be in the automotive program. The really great thing is we can get them into grade 9, then 10, then 11 automotive, and then they're in grade 11 right now. So then they're able to get additional credits.
Okay, the next question is about student volunteer hours. For students who are graduating this year, the community hour requirement has been reduced from 40 hours to 20 hours. So students who are graduating this year will have to demonstrate a minimum of 20 hours of volunteer service. If they are still looking for volunteer opportunities, guidance will be able to provide them with different opportunities. And a lot of agencies are offering online and virtual volunteer opportunities, because we recognize that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and that's it's not as easy to go out and do physical in-person volunteering. And just also just know if a student is struggling in school, we realize like the virtual format is a difficult format for students to learn in, and schools have built-in supports that meet the needs of their student population. And so just ask your school guidance counselor or vice principal about the supports that are available, and they'll be able to connect you. But our goal as is to ensure that all students are successful this year. And my principal, Lisa Edwards, is here as well, and she's saying that students can also do credit recovery to gain credits.
Our credit recovery has been going quite well because of the time where students are in school for almost 4 hours, every other day in person. It's a really good opportunity where they're sitting down, figuring out the credits that they need. The teacher's able to put together lessons and activities and things to be able to enrich the learning that they may have missed the first time around with that credit. And so we've had students now, gaining a couple credits. We know that each community was also impacted very differently through COVID, and that the last semester that was leading into this, some students, if they weren't successful by that March 13th day, and they weren't able to connect, they may have not passed a course. So we made sure that students in that situation, we had student success lead teachers. So we have 2 of those in our school, as well as 2 credit recovery teachers, to really get them in at the beginning of the quad to make sure that they're caught up with their classmates and their grade that they're meant to be in. I will let you have more guidance experience than I do, so I'll let you answer the
Yeah.
My Blueprint question.
So is my blueprint still being used? So my blueprint is a program that schools use to help students select courses for next year. And yes, as far as I know, my blueprint is still going to be used this year to allow students to select their courses for next year. Is it useful? It is useful because it allows accessibility for students to choose courses either at school or at home. And again, it allows parents to work with their children to select courses. So I find it pretty useful, and I think most guidance counselors would say that it's useful as well. And again, if you have questions or not able to access my blueprint or not understand how my blueprint works, because sometimes it can glitch. For example, if you are an ESL student and you are taking grade ESL level E, and then what happens is after ESL level E, you can take grade 11 English, but if you do that in my blueprint, it will glitch and show an error. So there's little things like that where you still need to consult a guidance counselor to select courses or just to figure out if you're choosing the right courses. Do you mean if you're so you're I see a question from D Williams saying my daughter's in grade 8, does she get it this year? Meaning, does she get access to my blueprint this year? She should.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, she should have access to my blueprint this year. And then guidance counselors, we traditionally we meet with all of our students in the school, and we go over the use of my blueprint and explain it to them and help them understand what courses they need to select, because in grade 9 there are a set of compulsory courses they must take, in grade 10 there are a set of compulsory courses they must take, and so on and so forth. So we still meet with students to select courses. We don't just leave it as a open up on my blueprint and go to it.
Well, the other question is about students who are doing virtual. Do contact the school's guidance counselor in the physical school or virtual one? So that's a great question, and there is a list of virtual guidance counselors. They are available when you email the virtual school. They do have alpha assigned guidance counselors as well as alpha assigned vice principals. They are able to answer most questions in terms of what's happening at the virtual school. But what we've been finding is that many of the parents, many of the students have been contacting our school in the physical school in terms of things like long range planning. The schools also, who are the homeschool, actually hold the OSR, which is the Ontario Student Record. And things like IEPs and things like that. A lot of the history of that student is at the school level, where the virtual guidance counselors are able to request an access as well as the teacher. But usually a virtual teacher, and just we're talking secondary, it can be kids from across the whole TDSB, whereas elementary, it's based on the four learning centers. So we are having a lot of parent questions for students that are in virtual. For example, questions about pathway planning, some of the community service hours, what's happening with OSSLT, all those types of questions. So we have been fielding those a lot as well. So if it's a very specific question to like virtual school and what's happening with that teacher or that exact course, I would start with the virtual route. And if it's something with a longer term needs of your child, I definitely would talk to the homeschool, as well as anything like special education needs. If there's anything that has in the OSR, I would also look at that as the homeschool.
So is there a plan, like, hopefully all my son's hard work will pay off and he'll pass math, but he has math and English now. So when he's done, he won't do any math or like until next September. And I'm just wondering, for the kids who are in this first and second quad, I mean, that's a long stretch. And when he comes in September, he will be in a different place than the kids who were in their last quad in math. Right. So I am worried about that and just wonder, like, it's hard to find the support now. And then, but everybody's going to be in different boats next September.
Yeah.
Can I answer that?
Oh, sure.
Please go ahead.
I know it is difficult to look at it and you're looking long term. However, there are studies that show that the amount that students lose over a certain period is equivalent to what they lose in the summer. So what he's gonna remember, he probably would have remembered the same come that time. I know it does seem like a long time. But if we were in a semester system, quads 1 and 2 are equivalent to semester 1, where students would have waited another 7 months to do their next level, say grade 10 in September. So I don't want you to worry. I'd be more concerned now with him getting the support to pass the grade 9 and have a good base to move on, then the amount of time from now to when he does it in September next year. And I'm not sure what school you're in, but I would strongly, if he's struggling in math is the one course that always concerns me with students not getting supported to have the fundamentals to move to the next level. So I would contact your guidance. I know we've put supports in our school since the first week back to school to support students with teacher tutors that meet with them on the asynchronous days to work one-on-one with the students. So I would reach out to your school to see what supports you can get, especially when he's at home asynchronously, if he's not in virtual school. So I'm not sure what program your child is in.
Hi, yeah, no, he's at school. So I think I'm just going to be pushier. I've been trying to guide him to go get help, but I think I just have to go in there.
Yes. And I do find that students don't want to show that they don't know. So they, in a lot of cases, they won't ask for that additional help. They won't advocate for themselves. So right now, while he's in grade 9 or just entering, that I think you really need to step up and advocate for him to get the supports he needs.
Okay, are there any other questions we can answer? Okay, so are anything like math clubs being run? Math clubs in terms of just practicing, say, for a like the Waterloo exams? Do you mean that kind of math club or just math tutorials?
Tutorials, like maybe something with a fun element. I don't know if high school students still like to have fun when they do these clubs.
We do have robotics clubs in certain schools, which incorporates a math element. Brendan, do you have any? You want to speak to this?
Yeah, we would normally have like a tutoring. Our school used to have like a drop-in kind of math help, and what that's been kind of changed to is more of like a booking in with one of our student success teachers, as well as we have money through the UPHS fund, which allows us to bring in math and science tutors, like a tutor in the classroom, and some of those have been working either virtually or when say a smaller class because we have smaller cohorts in terms of in-person clubs, because we don't want to mix any of the cohorts together. We have put a pause on our any type of club that's happening in person. We did do like the Terry Fox walk and run, which was an external thing where we went out one by one in our cohorts and did the walk socially distanced and outside to try and bring some of that community feel back, as we are very conscious that school looks very different as it did last year pre-COVID, and to bring things like clubs and activities. We had set our cafeteria up with one of our safety monitors, actually a DJ. So he came in, brought his DJ equipment, and his class were coming out for we have a break where they can go walk outside. The weather wasn't great on one day. So he brought in that equipment and the students could just kind of come into the caf with their teacher and able to move out there. Yes, thanks, Tina, for answering the UPHS. Other things we use funding for UPHS is we could use it to bring in like additional staffing or have like a grade 9 orientation day. So usually those are the urban priority designated schools. We'll get some extra funding for that. So.
Okay, so I guess thank you for participating in our session. And I'd like to thank Brandon. I'd like to thank Lisa Edwards for coming to support. And if you do have any other further questions, feel free to email us. Our emails are our first name dot our last name at tdsb.on.ca.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, bye everyone. Be safe.